The TIMEX Series S bids us farewell. Ming revisits the deep. Autodromo reminds me of the good old days. And Mark II brings back a watch that maybe never existed. It's episode 98 of A Week in Watches. I'm Zach Weiss. On with the show. Well, LVMH did their thing the other week, which resulted in a bunch of Carreras, a couple of Zeniths, a few fancy Vutons, and a new Daniel Roth that mere mortals like us will likely never see in person. It was a hoity-toity affair and covered quite thoroughly, so I'm not going to bother. Instead, we've got watches from brands that we all know and love. One more thing though, a quick shout out to the Christopher Ward X Second 12 Snake, celebrating the Lunar New Year. Ran out of time in the script, but check it out, it's a lot of fun. Before getting to the meat of this episode, I've got some cool news for y'all. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the first Wind-Up Watch Fair, which makes me feel so old, but apart from that, we are excited to announce that we've added a fourth show to the roster, taking place for the first time in Dallas, Texas. Yes, Wind-Up is making its way to the Longhorn State for a 2-day fair from March 15th to the 16th. The show will host around 40 brands and be held at the Hickory Street Annex in the Deep Ellum neighborhood. Texas fans, mark your calendars and head to windupwatchfair.com for more details as they emerge. TIMEX taps Galli for a finale. In 2020, TIMEX launched the Giorgio Galli S1, a watch designed by their creative director of the same name. It was a striking departure from TIMEX's normal fare. Sleek, modern, minimal, and automatic, but for the logo on the dial, one would not have expected it to come from the iconic, value-oriented American brand. As such, it was met with a mix of confusion and shock, some of which was directed at its $450 price tag, but eventually there was great appreciation. After having released the Marlin Handwound around 2017, TIMEX found itself in the good graces of the growing watch enthusiast community. The Galli S1 utilized this new fandom to play with higher-end concepts and a design language that was less retail-oriented. Billed as the most TIMEX ever, an admittedly confusing statement, it was clearly a passion project for the Italian Giorgio Galli, who has over 30 years of experience in the watch industry. The S1 made way for a few iterations, including a downsized 38mm option, and then in 2023, TIMEX launched the S2, which, while clearly drawing on the S1, was a true evolution of the concept. 38mm out of the gate, the S2 mixed a refined case construction, combining injection molded steel lugs, bezel, and case back with a titanium midcase. The dial dropped its few traditional elements like applied markers, rather going for a single applied metal ring with notches for the hours on an expansive solid black. A minimal yet effective solution. Priced at $975, the S2 had another new feature, a decorated Swiss-made Sellita SW200 movement inside, visible through a sapphire caseback, which contributed to its earning a Swiss-made designation as well. Modern and Euro chic, the S2 flexed TIMEX's manufacturing, Giorgio's design chops, while also pushing the design into a more avant-garde and even challenging space. Well, the S2 is back for the swan song of the S series, fully realized into a modern luxury watch. Now labeled the S2Ti, what was once steel has been replaced by the superior metal, yes I said it, titanium. And what was titanium is now forged carbon. So basically there's a forged carbon mid-case sandwiched between a titanium lug structure and a caseback. But what's else is that the bezel is gone, replaced with an edge-to-edge, and I truly mean edge-to-edge, massive domed sapphire crystal. Yes, like the glass box Carrera, but also kind of more dramatic as it truly comes to the edge of the case. Underneath the crystal, like some sort of metallic habitat, the dial is presented in a matte titanium hue, blending with the case for a tone-on-tone style. Legibility is preserved, however, as the hands and applied index feature finishing that gives them contrast. New for the S series is a 3-link bracelet that tapers from 18 to 16mm and is made fully of titanium. The tops of the links are brushed, while the sides of the links have been slightly hollowed out and matte finished, nicely echoing the case design. Most impressively, however, is a toolless sizing system. No pins or screws, rather the links themselves can be essentially pulled open, allowing them to slide out. It's really very cool and intuitive. The S2Ti is the final version of the S series, though that doesn't mean there won't be more Giorgio Galli watches. As such, it makes sense that they sort of went all out for it. And the price reflects that relative to the previous S models at $1,950. Yeah, that's $1,000 more than the previous S2 and $1,500 more than the first S1. But between the full titanium case and bracelet with a side order of carbon, that crazy bubble sapphire crystal, which might account for a decent portion of the added cost, and a well-decorated Sellita movement, it doesn't feel out of line either. Is it unexpected from TIMEX? Sure, but that's also kind of its charm. This isn't your everyday TIMEX. It's not meant to be. Rather, it's their creative director's passion project, one that's meant for enthusiasts who appreciate things like forged carbon and die-hard TIMEX fans. And to that end, it's limited to only 500 pieces, so get one while they last. Ming is up to something fishy. Last year, Ming launched the 3709 Bluefin Dual Crown Dive Watch. Their second production dive watch. It was an innovative design that managed to achieve 600 meters of water resistance with a compact 38 by 44.5 by 12.8 millimeter case, and had a clever internal bezel construction. Rather than having a bezel at all, the dial itself was rotated via the second crown underneath a floating loomed index embedded in sapphire. It was a cool design, certainly, but then it went on to win last year's GPHG award for a sports watch, beating out the likes of IWC, Tudor, and Zenith, which was quite the achievement. Well, the 3709 is back again with a slight makeover. And I'm just going to say this now, it's sold out by the time we got to record this, so sorry, but not my fault. The new version, dubbed the 3709 Uni, takes the dual crown case and coats it in black DLC. Always a move that adds some sleekness. Speaking from my own experience with the 3707 Monolith, Ming's watches wear black very well thanks to their distinctive lugs and elegant curves, so the Uni looks really good. The dial bezel surface continues the black and features a redesigned index that is a bold orange for the first 15 minutes, followed by 5-minute wide hollow blocks. This is where the name Uni comes in, as the orange color resembles the culinary delicacy often thought of as urchin roe. It is in fact urchin gonads, or the whole reproductive organ of the animal. Now you know. As with the Bluefin, the Uni has a floating index for traditional time telling, which also has received a redesign in the form of a single line that undulates sort of like a square audio wave. While not perhaps the easiest design for telling the exact minute, I find it graphically very appealing. The Ming 3709 Uni was limited to 150 pieces and priced at 5,250 Swiss francs. But none of that matters, as they are all sold out. Oh well. Autodromo revives a relic. Back in 2012, yes, 13 long years ago, Autodromo released the Monoposto, their first mechanical timepiece. I recall it being a big deal. You see, micro brands were still a pretty new concept. Vintage-inspired watches were maybe just starting to eke their way out of the ether. The day was still ruled by divers, tool watches, and homages. Just looking in the Worn & Wound archives, other articles from around this same time were about Lumtech, Dievos, Techne, Orient, Oberst Morgan, etc. The Monoposto was groundbreaking in its way. Inspired by Italian single-seat race cars from the 1950s, it had a design that did and still does stand out. While today we take things like box crystals for granted, they just weren't available from small brands back then. Automotive and gauge-inspired watches weren't a thing. Frankly, Autodromo deserves more credit for bringing them back than they get. And just a watch with unique details like wire lugs and a bowl-shaped case seemed groundbreaking. The watch was met with excitement and some controversy thanks to its infamous red line, but more importantly, it put Autodromo on the map as a pioneering microbrand and proved that this scene wasn't one to ignore. Well, fast forward to 2025, the watch world is in a wildly different place, and Autodromo is bringing back the three-hand Monoposto for the first time since 2012 as a collaboration with Mobil 1. To celebrate the 50th anniversary of the launch of the synthetic motor oil, which seems like a weird thing to celebrate, but I'm not a motorhead, Autodromo teamed up with the brand for a limited edition of 100 Monopostos in steel and 50 in gold PVD, both featuring the original, distinctive 43mm wire lug case, which, while large on paper, suits the design as it's meant to be read like a gauge on the wrist. The movement is still Miyota, but it has been updated from the 8000 series to a 9039, which is slimmer, true date-free, and 28,800 beats per hour, resulting in a thinner case profile as well. The dial has received a slight update too. Rendered in gloss white versus the original's silver, the hour numerals have been switched to the typeface that was found on the Monoposto chronograph that followed in 2016. Which is wider with open 6s and 9s for more retro elegant look. The railroad index around the edge of the dial remains the same, with lines that don't actually match the minutes, but rather refer to the ORX100 mark at 12, being divided into increments of 10 for every 5 minutes, with a longer line at 2.5. It's a bit confusing to read if you look at the lines, I have to say. The index is black, but the numerals are dark blue, which is a nice touch. There are two other rather obvious features to note. The first is that the red line is not present on the now sapphire crystal, used to be a K1 mineral. And the Mobile One Pegasus logo is printed in red at 6. Whether the line is gone to please the haters or because it would be too busy with the Pegasus logo, which is large and red as well, is hard to know, but I'd like to think it's because of the dial balance and not to distract from the very cool logo. Both versions feature 20mm Italian-made buffalo leather straps, blue on the steel, black on the silver, both with roller-style buckles. A reference to hood straps on old race cars, the roller buckles are an awesome detail. Priced at $875 in steel and $975 in gold PVD, I think these are going to really excite both automotive enthusiasts and those of us who remember the originals. You know, this might be the first time a watch has given me nostalgia for an experience in my own life, rather than a general sort of cultural nostalgia. While the design refers to a historic period, that's not what gives me the feels. Rather, it's remembering when they first came out and how exciting it was for Autodromo, enthusiasts, and the niche of micro brands that we at Warner Wound had decided to make our focus. The Monoposto LE is available now. Mark II makes a Mark II of a Mark II. I didn't expect to have 2 trips down memory lane in this episode, but here we are with a new Mark II that is a redux of a model from 2013, a sort of mythological Mark II, as so few were actually made, the Fulcrum 39. Mark II's spin on the iconic Milsub 5517, but rather than an homage, the idea was to consider what the watch would be if it hadn't stopped production, and further was a civilian version of said design. What you have is a 39.5 by 47 by 14.1 millimeter 200 meter tool watch with a bead blasted steel case. The dial is matte black and features a layout reminiscent of the sub, but different as well. The triangle at 12 is huge, as are the rectangular markers at 3, 6, and 9. Rather than circles between, smaller rectangles are used, giving it a more severe look. A minute track encircles the dial, and an optional date window sits at 4.5. There are 2 bezel inserts to choose from, a fully indexed 60-minute bezel and a 12-hour bezel with marks for the first 20 minutes. While the 60-minute bezel brings more of that 5517 flavor, the 12-hour bezel, to my eye, feels a touch more purposeful and clean. Finally, sealing the Milsub heritage, the hour hand is a broadsword instead of a Mercedes hand, and the minutes is a straight stick. The Fulcrum comes on either a stainless steel bracelet, rubber strap, or nylon Nitex strap. The first 100 of each variety, there are 4 because of bezel and date options, will include both a bracelet and a Nitex strap. The Fulcrum is priced at $995 and is already available, assuming supplies lasted. Those who know Mark II and its founder Bill Yao know he's a stickler for perfection, which is like a perfectionist, yet somehow a bit more anal. His watches take a long time to go from concept to production, batches are small, and are at times delayed because things just don't meet his expectations. This was more of a problem in the past before the ready-to-wear line was created, as it seemed like his watches took years and were few and far between. As such, back in the day when we saw the original Fulcrum, we were very excited by the concept and aesthetic. It truly felt like what a Mark II was meant to be at the time. A revisionist spin on an iconic military watch through the eyes of a die-hard enthusiast. The problem was, they were impossible to get for reasons only Bill truly knows. So the only time we ever encountered the Fulcrum was on Bill's own wrist when we meet him, such as our annual dinner at Basel. Now, 12 years later, enthusiasts finally have the chance to pick these up. And I have to say, Zach from 2013 might be a bit jealous. And that, as they say, is that. Thanks for watching episode 98 of A Week in Watches. Please give us a like and subscribe if you'd be so kind. We'll see you next time.